In today's lesson, we are going to be looking at nouns and adverbs. For this lesson, you'll need the following: a pen, a paper, no distractions. You can also use Microsoft Word if you prefer to. Before we start, we're going to recap the previous lesson, which we looked at adjectives and nouns. A key skill for GCSE English language is to be able to analyse how writers use language to achieve effects in their writing. So language refers to words, phrases and literary devices such as metaphors, similes, personification and so on. In the last lesson we looked at words, which refers to nouns and adjectives. Writers use powerful nouns and adjectives to create effects in their writing. It's important that you're able to zoom in on words such as nouns, adjectives, verbs and adverbs to describe the connotations and the effects. If you can't remember what the word connotation means, I would like you to look it up in the dictionary or go back to previous lessons for revision. A noun names a place, person, thing or animal in a sentence. You're going to pause the video now, copy out the sentences and underline the noun in these sentences that are highlighted in red. So the first one you're underlining the noun and the second one you're underlining the adjective. Today's lesson, we are going to explore verbs and adverbs and how they create meaning in texts. Verbs are very important words in sentences. They tell us about actions, what someone or something is doing. So the doing of the action is the subject. Verbs also tell us whether an action happened in the past, present or future. If you have a look at these examples, the man sings, so the word highlighted in red is the verb. The dog barks, a window shuts, the woman runs. Some verbs tell us what someone is and has. So is and has, have and am are what we call helping verbs or auxiliary verbs. So sometimes they can stand alone in a sentence. For example, I have curly hair, so have is the verb in the sentence. Or they can go alongside main verbs, which we will have a look in the next few slides. You're going to pause the video and you're going to copy out the sentences and underline the verbs in each of these sentences. Remember, verbs are action words, doing words. So think about what action is being done in the sentence. Now we're going to look at helping verbs or auxiliary verbs. So these are is, am, has, have, are. There are also was and were as well. But today we're just looking at these ones. So you're going to use these verbs that are in the box to complete the sentences. This is just for you to get an idea of the range of verbs that we use in sentences, because sometimes we don't really think about parts of speech and which words are verbs and which words are adjectives, for example. All sentences must have a verb for it to make sense. Even the shortest sentence needs a verb and a subject. So we have nouns and verbs in the boxes, and you can make short sentences just using these nouns and verbs. For example, you could say the rain fell, full stop. So rain would be the noun and the verb would be fell. So we have a subject, which is rain, and we have the verb, which is fell. So that is a complete sentence. It's a short, simple sentence with a subject and a verb. You're going to pause the video and you're going to make 4 short sentences using the nouns and the verbs from the box. Verbs are used to create powerful imagery as well as adjectives. So writers choose verbs to suggest mood or feeling. For example, if we look at this sentence, the old man danced around the room. Now, danced is a verb, but if we were to change the verb to stomped around the room, it changes the mood and the feeling of the man. So it might suggest that the man who's stomping might be angry, for example. If someone tiptoes around the room, what does that verb suggest to you? What are the connotations of tiptoe? Why would someone tiptoe? If someone staggers around a room, why would they stagger? What are the connotations of the word stagger? So you can see that the mood or feeling can be suggested by these verbs. So I would think if someone tiptoed around the room, they're scared, for example, or maybe they're trying to not be noticed. If someone staggered around the room, I might feel that they are perhaps drunk or maybe ill, they're going to pass out. So you can see the differences in meaning just by changing the verb. You're going to write a verb in the spaces provided and you're going to say what the character did. So you're going to choose more powerful verbs than the ones that have been crossed out, and it's going to suggest something about the characters. For example, the Prime Minister looked at the protesters. You're going to change that to a more powerful verb which would suggest how either the Prime Minister is feeling, or what mood the Prime Minister is in, or what kind of character the Prime Minister is. So why would the Prime Minister look at the protesters in a particular way? For example, is he annoyed, happy? So you're going to suggest how he's feeling about the protesters by changing the verb. The same for the other sentences. So you're going to pause the video now, write these sentences down on a piece of paper or on a Word document and change the verbs that have been crossed out. For the next task, we're going to look at tense, and this is also important when you're analysing fiction texts. Why does the writer write in the present tense or the past tense? And what effects does that have? You should be able to identify the present tense from the past tense by the verb. So the past means something has already happened, and the present means that something is happening now. When writers write in the present tense, it gives us this type of tension and immediacy, so we are following the action almost in real time. So if there is anything happening that is exciting, we can actually feel that excitement alongside the character because it's happening in the present tense. So that would be one of the effects of writing in the present tense. So you're just going to pause the video and write the verbs that are in the past tense. So I heard, you're going to change that to the present tense, which would be I hear, and you're going to do the same for the rest. Now we're going to look at adverbs. Adverbs are words that give extra information about verbs or events described in a sentence. Many adverbs give us information about how things happen, for example, sadly, quickly, carefully, but some verbs also tell us about where something happened, for example, here, there, outside, and when, today, tomorrow, soon, yesterday, on Monday, or how often, always, sometimes, never. We can tell if something is, a word is an adverb sometimes if it has ly at the end, but not all adverbs have ly at the end. Here is an example. There was talking. Well, there's a word missing there. Outside, the man was talking cheerfully. So this tells us where, and this tells us how, cheerfully. So we can change adjectives into adverbs by adding ly. So here we have a list of adjectives, and you're going to pause the video and you're going to change these adjectives into adverbs. So this will help you identify what is a verb and what is an adverb. The next task, you're going to pause the video, you're going to write a different adverb in each space to give more information about how the actions are performed. So the baby slept as we left the room. So how do babies sleep? It could be noisily, quietly, as something left the room. Is it peacefully? So you're going to think about which adverbs you're going to put in the gaps. So the information is going to tell us how. How did the baby sleep, and how did we, so I'm assuming that's the parents, leave the room. Sometimes adverbs are used with adjectives to add shades of meaning to the adjectives. These are some examples. Quite clever. So the word quite is an adverb describing a degree of how clever someone is. Fairly dangerous would suggest it's dangerous but not very dangerous. So you could see the different grades of meaning. So these are also adverbs as well. So sometimes you would see adverbs giving more information about an adjective. For example, someone could be really beautiful. Adverbs are often placed close to a verb, but sometimes they can be placed at the start of a sentence or at the end of the sentence. So here we can see the dog suddenly pounced. Suddenly, the dog pounced. The dog pounced suddenly. So we can see there's a difference. So with the third one, the dog pounced suddenly, has a different effect to the second one, suddenly the dog pounced. So when you put adverbs at the beginning of a sentence, you can create some type of tension or something unexpected, suddenly. So we have to wait for the rest of the information. It's almost like there's a pause. The dog pounced. If we just said the dog pounced suddenly, we're getting the information at the beginning of the sentence, so it's not really as suspenseful or surprising. This is also an effect that writers do. You're going to rewrite these sentences to include an adverb from the list, and you're going to choose a suitable adverb and decide where you think it should be added. For example, should it be added at the beginning of the sentence, at the end? Can it go in the middle? The man spoke to his neighbours. So how often? So you could say the man rarely spoke to his neighbours. Or you could say rarely the man spoke to his neighbours. But you have to listen to your sentence to see which one sounds better. Adverbs at the start of the sentence can comment on the event described. So you're going to choose the appropriate adverb and put it at the beginning. And when you do that, you remember to use a comma after the adverb. So the first one you could say, fortunately, comma, everyone was safe. Pause the video and copy the sentences out. So that's the end of the presentation. You will now email me your work and I will mark it for you. If you have any